If you could see what I once was, if you could go with me back to where I started from, then I know you would see a miracle of love that took me in its sweet embrace and made me what I am today. Just an old sinner saved by grace. I'm just a sinner saved by grace. When I stood condemned to death, he took my place. Now I live and breathe in freedom. With each breath of life I take, loved and forgiven, back with the living. I'm just a sinner saved by grace. How could I boast of anything I've ever seen or done? How could I dare to claim as mine the victories God has won? Where would I be had God not brought me gently to this place? I'm here to say I'm nothing but a sinner saved by grace. I'm just a sinner saved by grace. When I stood in the condemned to death, he took my place. Now I live and breathe in freedom with each breath of life I take. Loved and forgiven, back with the living. I'm just a sinner saved by grace. Hello and welcome to the Bible with Briscoe. I will be your narrator, Shenandoah Briscoe, and we're going to get through the Bible in 1 year. Today is day number 62, and we'll be covering Numbers 28 through 30. Also, Mark 8:22 through 38. Father, I just ask for purity in voice and articulation, so that this translation may be a blessing for you and all of those who are listening. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. And they all said, amen. Daily offerings, Numbers 28. The Lord said to Moses, give this command to the Israelites and say to them, make sure that you present to me at the appointed time my food offering as an aroma pleasing to me. Say to them, this is the food offering you are to present to the Lord. 2 lambs, a year old, without defect, as a regular burnt offering each day. Offer 1 lamb in the morning and the other at twilight, together with a grain offering with 1/10 of ephah of the finest flour mixed with 1/4 of a hin of oil from pressed olives. This is the regular burnt offering instituted at Mount Sinai as a pleasing aroma, a food offering presented to the Lord. The accompanying drink offering is to be 1/4 of a hin of fermented dry drink with each lamb. Pour out the drink offering to the Lord at the sanctuary. Offer the second lamb at twilight, along with the same kind of grain offering and drink offering that you offered in the morning. This is a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. Sabbath offering. On the Sabbath day, make an offering of 2 lambs, a year old, without defect, together with its drink offering and a grain offering of 2/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with olive oil. This is the burnt offering for every Sabbath, in addition to the regular burnt and offering and its drink offerings. Monthly offerings. On the first of every month, present to the Lord a burnt offering of 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs, a year old, all without defect. Which each With each bull there is to be a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with oil. With the ram a grain offering of 2/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with oil. And with each lamb a grain offering of 1/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with oil. This is for a burnt offering, a pleasing aroma, and a food offering presented to the Lord. With each bull there is to be a drink offering of half a hin of wine. With the ram a third of a hin, and with each lamb a quarter of a hin. This is the monthly burnt offering to be made at each new moon during the year. Besides the regular burnt offerings with its drink offering, 1 male goat is to be presented to the Lord as a sin offering. The Passover offering. On the 14th day of the first month, the Lord's Passover is to be held. On the 15th day of this month, there is to be a festival. For 7 days, eat bread made without yeast. On the first day, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. Present the Lord a food offering consisting of a burnt offering of 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs, a year old, all without defect. With each bull offering a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with oil. Then with the ram 2/10 of an ephah, and with each of the 7 lambs 1/10. Include 1 male goat as a sin offering to make atonement for you. Offering these in addition to the regular morning burnt offerings, in this way present the food offering every day for 7 days as an aroma pleasing to the Lord. It is to be offered in addition to the regular burnt offering and its drink offering. On the 7th day hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. The Festival of Weeks. On the day of first fruits, when you present to the Lord an offering of new grain during the Festival of Weeks, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. Present a burnt offering of 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs, a year old, as an aroma pleasing to the Lord. These are to be without defect. It doesn't say that, but I'm sure they are. With each bull there is to be a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with olive oil. With the ram 2/10, and with each of the 7 lambs 1/10, including 1 male goat to make atonement for you. Offer these together with their drink offerings in addition to the regular burnt offerings and its grain offerings. Be sure the animals are without defect. The Festival of Trumpets. On the first day of the 7th month, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. It is a day for you to sound the trumpets. As an aroma pleasing to the Lord, offer a burnt offering of 1 young bull, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs, a year old, all without defect. With the bull offering a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with olive oil. With the ram 2/10, and with each of the 7 lambs 1/10, including 1 male goat as a sin offering to make atonement for you. These are in addition to the monthly and daily burnt offerings, with their grain offerings and drink offerings as specified. They are food offerings presented to the Lord, a pleasing aroma. The Day of Atonement. On the 10th day of the 7th month, hold a sacred assembly, and you must deny yourselves and do no work. Present an aroma offering pleasing to the Lord, a burnt offering of one young bull, one ram, and 7 male lambs, a year old, all without defect. With the bull offering, a grain offering of 3/10 of an ethel of the finest flour mixed with olive oil. With the ram 2/10, and with each of the 7 lambs 1/10. Include 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the sin offerings for atonement and the regular burnt offerings with its grain offering and their drink offerings. The Festival of Tabernacle. On the 15th day of the 7th month, hold a sacred assembly, and do no regular work. Celebrate a festival to the Lord for 7 days. Present an aroma pleasing to the Lord, a food offering consisting of a burnt offering of 13 young bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs, a year old, all without defect. With each of the 13 bulls offer a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with olive oil. With each of the 2 rams 2/10, and with each of the 14 lambs 1/10. Include 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offerings with its grain offering and drink offerings. On the 2nd day, offer 12 young bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs, a year old, all without defect. With the bulls, rams, and lambs, offer their grain offerings and drink offerings, according to the numbers specified, including 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offerings with its grain offering and their drink offerings. On the 3rd day, offer 11 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs, a year old, all without defect. With the bulls, rams, and lambs, offer their grain offerings and drink offerings according to the number specified, including 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offerings with its grain offering and a drink offering. On the 14th day, offer 10 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs, a year old, all without defect. With the bulls, rams, and lambs, offer their grain offerings and drink offerings according to the number specified. Include 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offerings with its grain offering and a drink offering. On the 5th day, offer 9 bulls, 4 rams, and 14 male lambs, a year old, all without defect. With the bulls, rams, and lambs, offered their grain offering and a drink offering according to the number specified, including 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain offering and drink offering. On the 6th day, offer 8 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs, a year old, all without defect. With the bulls, rams, and lambs, offered their grain offerings and a drink offering according to the number specified, including 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering and with its grain offering and drink offering. On the 7th day, offer 7 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs, a year old, without defect. With the bulls, rams, and lambs, offer their grain offerings and drink offerings according to the number specified. Include 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering, with its grain offering and drink offering. On the 8th day, hold a closed special assembly, and do no regular work. Present as an aroma pleasing to the Lord a food offering consisting of a burnt offering of 1 bull, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs, a year old, all without defect. With the bull, the ram, and the lambs offered their grain offerings and drink offerings according to the number specified. Include 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain offering and drink offering. In addition to what you vow and your free will offerings, offer these to the Lord at your appointed festivals. Your burnt offerings, grain offerings, drink offerings, and fellowship offerings. Moses told the Israelites all that the Lord had commanded him. Vows. Numbers 30. Moses said to the head of the tribes of Israel, "This is what the Lord commands. When a man makes a vow to the Lord or takes an oath to obligate himself by a pledge, he must not break his word, but must do everything he said. When a young woman still living in her father's household makes a vow to the Lord or obligates herself by a pledge, and her father hears about her vow or pledge, but says nothing to her, then all her vows and every pledge by which she obligated herself will stand. But if her father forbids her when he hears about it, none of her vows or the pledges by which she obligated herself will stand. The Lord will release her because her father has forbidden her. If she marries after she makes a vow, or after her lips utter a rash promise by which she obligates herself, and her husband hears about it, but says nothing to her, then her vows or the pledge by which she obligated herself will stand. But if her husband forbids her when but if her husband forbids her when he hears about it, he nullifies the vow that she obligates her or the rash promise by which she obliged herself, and the Lord will release her. Any vow or obligation taken by a widow or divorced woman will be binding on her. If a woman living with her husband makes a vow or obligates herself by a pledge under oath, and her husband hears about it but says nothing to her and does not forbid her, then all her vows or the pledges by which she is obligated herself will stand. But if her husband nullifies them when he hears about them, then none of the vows or pledges that came from her lips will stand. Her husband has nullified them, and the Lord will release her. Her husband may confirm or nullify any vow she makes or any sworn pledge to deny herself. But if her husband says nothing to her about it from day to day, then he confirms all her vows or the pledges binding on her. He confirms them by saying nothing to her when he hears about them. If, however, he nullifies them sometime after he hears about them, then he must bear the consequences of her wrongdoing. These are the regulations the Lord gave Moses concerning relationships between a man and his wife, and between a father and his younger daughters still living at home. Okay, Mark. Here we go. Mark 8:22 through 38. Jesus heals a blind man at Bethesda. They came to Bethesda, and some people brought a blind man and begged Jesus to touch him. He touched the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. When he had spit on the man's eyes and put his hands on him, Jesus asked, "Do you see anything?" He looked up and said, I see people. They look like trees walking around. Once more Jesus put his hands on the man's eyes. Then his eyes were opened. His sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Jesus sent him home, saying, Do not even go into the village. Peter declares that Jesus is the Messiah. Jesus and his disciples went on to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. On the way, he asked them, Who do people say I am? They replied, Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others one of the prophets. But what about you? He asked. Who do you say I am? Peter answered, You are the Messiah. Jesus warned them, Do not tell anyone about him. Jesus predicts his death. He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. Get behind me, Satan, he said. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns, the way of the cross. When he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels. And there you have it. That finishes up the Bible with Briscoe for today. And tomorrow we will be covering Numbers 31 through 33 and Mark 9, 1 through 29. Father, I just pray that this was a blessing to you. And I also pray that it was a blessing to everyone who listened, and that also they all come back tomorrow. And we will continue with the Bible with Briscoe, and in the meanwhile, have a blessed day in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. And they all said, Amen.